All right. Okay, so hello.
Yeah.
Uh, my name's Tare, and with me is Pinsky, and this is Chart Reflections. And we're going to have a conversation tonight. And to begin with, we'd like to acknowledge the land where we are, and I'll start. Um, I live in land that is sacred and ancestral homes to the Dakota people, and also the Anishinaabe people have heritage here and still live here and still have sacred relationship to this land. I live at the confluence of the Mississippi River and the Minnesota River, and that area is called Bodote, I believe. I'm sorry. And it is the birthplace of the Dakota people. And so there is a lot of power and beauty in this land, and also a lot of pain from the colonization and the genocide and the stealing of land from these people, and rupturing relationship with the land. And I want to claim that I take it as a sacred responsibility to become in better relationship with the people of this land and the land itself. As I'm talking, this is March 15th, and we're having a snowstorm. And so where I am, it's also known as Minneapolis, and I'm watching that snow pile up, and it's very peaceful out there. So that's my land where I am right now.
Thanks, Tara. And my name is Pensky, and I am coming to you and to whoever else is watching this from Santa Cruz, California. And this is the traditional land of the Awaswas-speaking Ohlone people. And it's also under the care of the Amamutsun tribal band, which is made up of various Ohlone people from the Monterey Bay and the San Francisco Bay area. And where I live is in the floodplains of the San Lorenzo River. And this was land that would periodically flood year to year. And then sometime in the 70s, they built levees. So the San Lorenzo River is no longer free to do what rivers do. And I hope that someday it will be freed once again to do as it wants to do. And also a mile or two away from me is perhaps the site of the UP village, which was a village of the Awaswas speaking Ohlone people. And this is land that has also been very much marked by colonization, and nearby is the Mission Santa Cruz, which was the first site of colonization here. And there's a lot of repair work being done in California to dismantle the missions, or at least name what they have been and the trauma that they have created and continue to create. And I hope that being here today talking about queer astrology can be another step in the work of decolonization and connecting to place and being stewards of the land that we live with. I hope this can be for the liberation of all beings.
Thank you.
Also, it is sunny outside, but it's been one of those cloudy, sunny days where it sometimes still rains when the sun is out, and it's very, very windy. Check.
Check.
And before we start talking, so I know I'm feeling nervous, a lot of energy in my body. I would like to have a moment to ground into this moment, into this body. Blessed be, thank you for being here with me, Tara, and for inviting me to talk with you.
Yes. Yeah, Stars Dance Mystery School has just started a new year and a new iteration, a new way of being. And we have had Monday night study groups that have been coinciding with the classes that we've been teaching. And now I'm going to offer, and Pinsky's going to join me in offering chart reflections on Monday nights, which will be recorded. And, you know, depending on your Patreon level, you'll get the recordings, or you also could join us. And we hope people will and weekly join us and have some of you offer to volunteer to have your chart explored and reflected upon in the evening. And so this is a teaching time. It's a time to learn some astrology skills and to reflect and to kind of discuss what astrology means to us and ask questions. And so we hope that that continues. And Pinsky is going to be a part of that. And I'm really excited about that. So, Pinsky, I have a question for you, if you wouldn't mind answering. And, you know, um, tell me about your journey to astrology. How'd that happen?
Thanks for asking about your journey into astrology. And I would say, yeah, I grew up knowing I was a Cancer, and I just didn't connect to it that much. I really only knew about the kind of sensitivity and the connection to home, being a homebody. Wow, I really like going out into the world and exploring, and I have these other parts, and it just, you know, doesn't really feel like it resonates with me. And then I think it was about 8 years ago. I had just finished up with a Free Cascadia witch camp at Windward in Washington. And I went with my partner to their family's home in Southern California. And at the time, I was going through like a legal battle from Occupy, our Occupy here in Santa Cruz, and had some pretty gnarly charges, like some felony, some conspiracy. It was very scary, and I had the trial scheduled for after witch camp, and so ready for it, and then it got canceled at the last minute, and it was the second time the trial had been postponed, and I just fell into despair, and I was maybe just like the energetic dip down that sometimes can happen after witch camps. And I was struggling with my partner, and it was in Southern California and all these buildings, and it was just felt really terrible. And then my partner's mother had all these astrology books, like that the only astrology book you'll ever need, which is not true, or at least if you want to go a little further in astrology, or have a queer analysis at all. But I read that and discovered that I had a moon sign, that I had a rising sign, that I had, a Mercury sign, right? All the planets. And I was like, oh, I'm actually way more complicated. And my partner's mother also had that book that's, it's pretty simplistic, but it's relationships based on two people's birthdays. And I'll tell you in this little snippet. And it said my partner and I had maddening instability was our little catchphrase for our relationship. And I was experiencing maddening instability with them. I was like, oh, maybe this really answers a lot of our struggles. And so I just got, I had that, the only astrology book you'll ever know. And I started carrying it around with me everywhere. And I started looking at my friends' signs. When I would meet people, I would like look up all their information, use the chart to find their rising. It was before I really knew how easy it was to look at charts online and find astrological information online. I had a notebook where I wrote down everyone's sun and moon and rising, and then I was comparing and contrasting different people who had the same sun versus moon versus rising. And I was just pretty fanatical about it for a bit. And it was very much like learning a new language and a new way of connecting to people and a new way of understanding myself. And I think about that time that, I discovered the depths of astrology. I started following your Follow the Moon, Tara. And so you were actually the first astrologer I ever followed. And then, of course, I got into Chani Nicholas. And then at some point discovered there was so much on the internet about astrology. So I started studying there as well. At Witch Camp, I did this embodied astrology path. And that was really amazing for connecting with just the different directions and the different elements. And we had a song for each sign and started playing with having our birth charts kind of in real space, like each of us being a planet for somebody else and looking at people's charts like that. So then I really incorporated like the embodied aspect of astrology and how these things are in the world, in our bodies. And then I think I've just, dipped through different periods of being like really, really, really into astrology and then kind of letting it sink in. And I've been with the mystery school for about a year now, and so have deepened my knowledge through that, and also have been reading more charts too. And I would say that's kind of where I am. I know there's so much more to learn about astrology. It just keeps on going deeper the more I learn about it. And it feels like where my growth edge is with it now is just reading people's charts and working on kind of the astrologer client interaction and how to actually have conversations that unlock people's charts for them and have it less of, just, oh, I'm telling you all these things, and more of a conversation. What is the chart saying to you? And how does this resonate with you? And kind of following the lead of the client, or, for me, it's friends that I'm reading their charts. Check. Oh, you're muted, Tara.
I was hearing echoes, so I wanted to mute. Thank you for sharing that story. There's a lot about it I resonate with. I want to just kind of like tell you the ways that it feels similar in that you and I both met for the first time at a witch camp. So you've mentioned witch camps, and those were spiritual and are still spiritual week away in the woods, usually organized by the reclaiming tradition that we're both part of, or at least I am, and I met you there. And you know, it's a thing. So we both, you know, had this earth-based or, you know, witchcraft point of view coming into an interest in astrology, because that's after my very first sort of experience with that week-long intensive, and this was in the 80s, a long time ago. There was the first week intensive in California um, by some reclaiming witches. And I came back, you know, sort of like really fired up with wanting to learn a lot of tools of magic and spirituality and witchcraft. And my idea was to take an astrology class to learn about the elements, because I knew that signs had elemental associations with them. Um, and that was just part of my like acquiring knowledge. And, you know, as part of that introductory class, the teacher asked us to gather charts of our friends and family and just like start to see how we're noticing astrology living through the people we know. And that's so important. So I, you know, I understand like that is such a step that I think is a great step for learning astrology. Some people will just focus on themselves, but you know, like get the charts of everyone you know and start to like, oh, I see that moon sign there, or wow, that must be your Mars that's doing that. You know, like you start to see people through astrology, and we're more than our charts, and of course we don't want to limit our relationships that way, of course, but it's really it's kind of like for me, my process of becoming an astrologer was to learn to see the world through astrology, not just my friends. And so then it expands out into the news and you know, into like how I'm seeing people interact as I'm going down the street, you know, like recently, for instance, Mars went into Gemini and it had been in Taurus for a while, and I got in my car and there was people zooming around. I go, oh yes, Mars is in Gemini now. Let's just like be a little bit more careful because Gemini is going to speed stuff up. So that's, yeah. So having the lens of our friends and family, but the world, and also just kind of starting to look at everything with at least a bit of an astrological lens. That is what I also did early on. Um, and you know, I learned astrology. I took that initial class, but I didn't actually dive into it until I was in a crisis. And it sounded like to me you were also in a crisis moment of astrology just sort of reflected back to you like, oh, there is more to think about in this moment than just that this moment is hard, that maybe there are forces or energies or, you know, something going on that would contribute to that. And that was true for me. At one point, I got a reading and it just described everything about what I was feeling. And I was amazed that that was true. And then just became obsessed about learning and just sort of, you know, couldn't quit absorbing information. And so I was doing most of my learning about astrology in the early 90s, which also influences the kind of astrologer I am. Most of the astrology at that time had a psychological focus. There weren't traditional astrology and the techniques of like Hellenistic astrology were just being uncovered and recovered and you know, analyzed. But I basically am an astrologer that uses astrology for magic and uses it for personal development and you know, and a relationship. So that magic part comes into the relationship with mystery around me. And that's my focus. And so the kind of astrology I learned in the 90s actually serves that, begins to serve that well. So that was the other topic that I wanted to talk to you about is, you know, do you have any ideas about the intersection of magic and astrology? Do you use astrology in any kind of sacred way, spiritual way? What, how does that work for you?
Well, I would say, first off, when I give people readings and actually sit down with them, I like to treat it like a ritual and create a container with them. And it is really special and sacred when someone trusts us enough to look at their chart. And I see it very much as a sacred responsibility to hold that information well and not to cause harm with the astrology chart and the way I'm reading it to somebody. So there's that. I would say the mystery school has been really helpful in bringing in magic with astrology and blending the two for me. Because while I've been with the mystery school, I've paid a lot more attention to the moon sign and to the different planets that feel like they're really speaking to me. Uranus is really with me, but actually since the new moon, I think Neptune is really speaking to me now. So understanding what like the larger influences are, what the planets are doing for all of us, and then understanding how that's intersecting with my chart and how it's intersecting with the charts of people around me. Oh, is this Neptune? So it facilitates, I would say, a greater connection with what's around me. And also I'm beginning to be able to discern like, oh, okay, well, it's not just this thing is happening around me. It's like, oh, okay, see, like this is kind of this thing and this is kind of this thing. So I'm getting more sensitivity to the different planetary influences. And then with the, especially understanding the moon signs, what sign the moon is in, and is it, what element is it in? I've begun really tailoring my rituals much more to what the astrological influences are. So we had the new moon the other day in Pisces. And so I was thinking, okay, well, there's also some Neptune contact going on, some Venus contact in there. Like I'm going to come up with a ritual that's more, well, my ritual was, I have a like microphone and amp and loop pedal. So I made like a soundscape that kind of was oceanic feeling. And then I did some like grief releasing, and then a little bit of stillness and receiving like the dreaminess and hopefully inspiration of Neptune. But I was also like, okay, this is just kind of this more atmospheric place where I'm not really trying to get anywhere. I'm just kind of in the process and just letting it surround me. And that new moon ritual looked really different than the new moon in Aquarius ritual I did. So that feels like a really powerful kind of level up that I've gotten in the last year through the mystery school. Yeah, just being able to share that with other people too. Like, oh, maybe like pay attention to these things or think about this a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that people are getting way more astrologically conversant. So it's easier to actually, you know, kind of suggest, oh, here's an astrological influence. Maybe we should think about this as we do this ritual or this magic together and when we're in groups or, you know, working with other people. It seems like I've noticed like at the beginning of when I was really eager to bring astrology into magic, it was like, it seemed a little strange actually, even though being a witch is very strange. A strange part of the strangeness. But now it doesn't seem strange at all, which is cool. I'm happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, what I mean by magic is sacred relationship. So sometimes it's like bringing in an intention and like really doing various things to add into that and create that intention and to plant that seed and let it grow. And sometimes for me, magic is just a relationship with mystery, and a relationship with the land and a relationship with the energies. And, like you talked about, the planets are sometimes I think of them as gods, and sometimes I think of them as archetypes and energies. And, they're all those things, and I interact with them. And, you know, um, so magic is a part of that too, that relationship, what I'm learning from them, where's my trajectory in my life, and how does astrology help me move through that. And the moon, of course, is the thing that is, so sacred to me. The lunar cycle, the new moon, and then, all of the phases going up to the full and waning. And that is really, it's a spiritual practice. So for me, when I say magic, I'm also sometimes just mean spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's not any different for me. But it's true in our school. What I love about our school and what I hope that we continue to cultivate are whole bunch of different approaches. Like not everyone has to be the same. Not everyone has to think about magic the same way or think about astrology even the same way. But we can just sort of like share what the magic is for us and what we're working on and how we're working on it, and sort of like inspire each other to keep learning new ways and you know, being alive in this way. Yeah, so it's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah.
Another part of
Wait. Oh, can I say one more thing before we go to the next question? Yeah, I really like what you said about sacred relationship. And I'm seeing another way that astrology and magic are really blending for me is um, just in the mystery school, there's been a lot of invitations to see the elements in the world and to understand kind of the aspects that the different planets are making to each other, like seeing that out in the world, in nature, in the weather, in the rocks, in the water. And I think like seeing that outside and then also knowing like, oh, and that's in me, all the same elements having these same kind of relationships. And like, that's all in other people too. Yeah, has done a lot to like bring the outside world into the inner world and inner to the outside, and really, yeah, cultivating that sense of sacred relationship.
That's nice. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about and see what ideas you have about is, what does queer astrology mean to you? What is this thing? It could be anything.
Totally. Yeah. 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 Anything. That's one thing it means. Just like up. Like into all the complexity. Yeah, a lot of the astrology books out there or things that are online, just so often fall into those binaries. Like this is a good aspect, this is a bad aspect, this planet is good, this planet is bad.
Mhm.
Or just how prevalent it is that people talk about Mars as a him and Venus as a she. And so queer astrology for me means really expanding and complexifying all
Mm.
of those binaries, and just like, well, what actually is Venus doing, and why does this so often be called, like, yeah, get feminized, and how do we think about what Venus is doing without the convenient label of feminine, and what actually of Venus is left out by putting that label on it? And then how do different people relate to Venus based on that label? Um, so a lot of emphasis in queer astrology is on like thinking about the planets outside of gender, or putting, you know, a queer identity on them. Just like, oh, it's this thing that shifts and presents itself in different ways at different times. Um, and then, yeah, I think, there's also, yeah, I am coming up so much with just how much my brain likes to put things into binaries and wants to resolve everything and put it in neat little boxes. And like you were saying, that, you know, cultivating that sacred relationship with mystery, that also feels like that's in queer astrology. It's like, these are entities and energies that cannot be classified, and we're just endeavoring to understand them as well as we can, and also just continuing to give them room to emerge, to present themselves as they want to, and to not come with already our ideas about how they're supposed to be, but really just how does that energy actually feel in my body, and how does it shift over time, and how does this person experience this energy, how does this person experience this, and like letting that all exist at the same time, which, yeah, is definitely that paradox of like, what is this thing, and I want to ask more and dig at it, and then also like, and it's all these things, I'm gonna let it just be
Hmm.
really complicated.
Oh, I love that. I love this idea of letting the planets, for instance, come to us and be who they want to be. And that feels like so much for me. That's about the mystery and the sacredness. And but it queer astrology also, you know, gets to that edge of activism and that edge of what have we how have we even approached the mysteries in a way that we're going to acquire and we're going to label and we're going to, you know, put in a box and sort of, you know, there's so much about astrology that feels like it's creating pattern from the sky and or the sky is giving us so much pattern, but it's also kind of confining to say, you know, Mars can only be this thing. And why not just be receptive and let Mars be who Mars is? And so it is a back and forth. Um, I know that I want to be informed. I want to know about the traditions of astrology. I want to question where the sources and the colonization has happened in astrology. I want to really question how much, you know, and I know that my point of view and framework has been incredibly influenced by whiteness and colonization and how can I shift out of that? And I think even querying astrology helps that. You know, it's kind of like it's another layer of asking, well, why? Why are we
Mhm.
doing it this way? Or what about this makes you think that?
Mhm.
And then one of the things I love so much about queer community is just this flourishing and flowering of the individual, the uniqueness of a love for the world in one's own way. Um, it's a beautiful love that I think when we can bring that kind of love into any spiritual practice, any tool of knowledge, it makes it beautiful. It makes it actually alive. So yeah, I hope that we keep doing that and attracting people to the school who want to queer it up with us. Who are curious in that way. It's very, very, very beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I wondered if you had any questions that you wanted to ask me, because I kind of came up with all those questions for you. I wanted to give you an opportunity if you do.
I am curious, what inspired you to start a mystery school?
Ah, that's a good question. I am gonna say that my first experience, a very powerful, powerful experience with a mystery school, was a mystery school called Diana's Grove Mystery School that I belonged to for 10 years. And it was based in Missouri, but it also had an internet uh, program component to it as well. Although social media was not as developed at that time as it is now, but um, it was beautiful, and it made me who I am, really, what I learned from that mystery school. And so I appreciated the way community in that school could come together and kind of foster learning and foster evolution and spiritual development and support each other. And so I really think I wanted my practice of astrology to do that. I also have an Aquarius moon, which I think is always pushing me to be in community and form community and figure out how community is essential for our lives. So it's just that, yeah, that's what I wanted. I wanted community. I wanted an environment where people could have a more well-rounded experience with astrology. And I wanted a place to bring magic into astrology from the point of view of how I understand magic. I think there's a ceremonial type magic um, that many astrologers do, and some we do have one facilitator in Star Students Mystery School, Cabra, who is using more ancient techniques for our astrological magic and election magic. And I'm really excited actually to learn from Cabra about some of this. My magic is very earth based and, you know, just just really, really, I call myself a hedge witch. So that's the kind of magic I do, which is a very pragmatic, practical kind of magic. And so I wanted a place for all that to happen.
Yeah.
Which I hope that it does.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
far, so good.
Good. Yeah. Well,
I can come up with more questions, but we can.
oh,
Yeah.
you do?
I mean, I can.
Oh, no, 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 that's okay. You don't have to
Okay.
hold yourself to ask me any questions. I think this is a good enough, length of time and a good
Okay.
conversation for tonight.
Okay.
And like I say, I really hope some other people join us because it's really fun.
Love to look at your chart.
We'll look at your chart.
Mhm.
The best way to do that is through joining Patreon and get on our Discord, which is kind of where we chat with each other, and we'll take it from there. All right. Well, thanks for talking to me tonight.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for inviting me to talk with you. Yeah.
Okay.